Hello tarot readers, today I'm going to do a small video on why I have over 100 decks of tarot cards. So without any more, let's get straight to the video. My normal go-to deck is the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot. The Rider-Waite Tarot is just a really easy deck for me to work with, and the Radiant Rider-Waite, I just love the colouring of them, and it's just my number one deck to go to most of the time. But I work with the tarot a lot. I mean, I've got this deck of cards in my hands for hours and hours and hours every single day. And it can get a little bit boring, to be honest, using the same deck all the time. You can just lose that edge, lose that little bit of inspiration. Now, the reason why tarot readers have so many different decks is totally individual. It's really personal. Every tarot reader is different. Every tarot reader will buy a different deck for different reasons. But I like to have different decks. One, because I'm a tarot deck collector, and two, I just enjoy that feeling of grabbing a deck of cards and letting the artist inspire me. So when I do a reading, I use really 4 ways, but 3 of the main ways is the ways a lot of tarot readers do it. First, it's my basic meaning of the tarot cards. So I like to get a deck of cards on the table when I'm giving a reading, and straight away I can find that basic meaning. That, of course, is different for every tarot reader. The second thing I like to do is to let the artist inspire me. So I let the artist inspiration just kind of lead me a little bit. And the third thing I like to do is let my intuition kick in. So I've got the basic meanings, and then I've got this kind of door that opens for the artist inspiration to lead me, and a door that opens for my intuition. And also, because I'm a medium, if Spirit want to communicate, if Spirit want to come through, that's number 4, and that's obviously really kind of individual to each tarot reader. Not all tarot readers are mediums, but because I'm a medium, just know that that does happen as well. Spirit do communicate with me. But as a tarot reader, the 3 main kind of ways are the basic meaning, the artist inspiration, and your own intuition. Now, the thing about artists is some artists are not tarot readers. So even though they may not work with my way of understanding the cards, they may not work with anyone's way of understanding the cards. When you've got an amazing artist that doesn't understand anything about the tarot, you can really pick that up in a deck of cards. It's kind of really noticeable that the artist has got kind of no idea what they're doing, even if the artwork is beautiful. Now, of course, you may get a lot of artists that do things in their way, but it just isn't my way of doing it. So that makes it quite hard for me to connect with the deck as well. Other times we have amazing artists who may not be tarot readers, but they do understand about the tarot, or at least they've really gone into it to be able to create their deck. They've put as much energy as they can into learning the tarot, or they're working really closely with a tarot reader. And you can tell the difference in those type of arts. When the artist is working kind of with a tarot, whether it's a system of the Rider-Waite or the Thoth system or any kind of system, you can just tell in the tarot cards where they've got that kind of system behind them. Now, nowadays, we're getting a lot of tarot decks with different artists working with tarot readers, so it's brilliant combination, because obviously I'm a tarot reader, but I couldn't draw a picture to save my life. So if I was to ever do a deck, I'd want to work with an artist, and I would tell the artist obviously what I would want in the image, etc., etc. The other thing is, you do get tarot readers who are artists, and they'll do their own deck of cards, and normally they're amazing decks of cards. But again, I don't always click with them decks of cards, because sometimes their way of seeing tarot isn't my way. It's just personal choices. But I'm just going to show you a few examples today. For example, I've got the Everyday Witch Tarot. Now, the Everyday Witch Tarot, this is in Spanish, but it's the Everyday Witch Tarot. The box is really, really familiar. It's an amazing deck of cards that I do connect with. When I first got it, I was kind of 50-50, but I do connect with it. The 78 Doors Tarot is a deck of cards. I absolutely love this deck of cards. I've had this for years, and it's been an amazing deck of cards. And of course, we have the Lightseers Tarot. And the Lightseers Tarot for me, and again, another really modern deck, this was kind of love at first sight for me. So if we go into these decks of cards, let's say we take the Six of Swords from the Radiant Rider-Waite, which normally talks about a journey. So we're heading off on a journey, we're escaping, and most tarot readers will see this as a journey. Obviously, not all tarot readers follow the same system or have the same meanings, but that's a journey. Now, if we look at the Lightseer's Tarot, I can definitely see that journey. So it's going to keep in with my basic meanings, and at the same time, the artist inspiration is going to open some doors and my own intuition will kick in. So that's an amazing card. It adds more depth when the artist inspiration lets me open up my own intuition. Again, we've got, this is the Everyday Witch Tarot, and again we can see that journey. This time they're on foot. An amazing tarot card that just keeps in with my kind of way, and it also gives me that bit extra. But if we go to a deck like the Atlantic Tarot, Tarot of Atlantis, their Six of Swords is so different. Look at that. And that's because sometimes the artist doesn't understand tarot, or sometimes they go for a theme. So the tarot reader like me may not understand the theme that's behind this. I've read about Atlantis, but I'm not into Atlantis, so I wouldn't understand what's going on in that scene. So that would kind of stop me from letting it flow. I'm like, well, where's my journey? What's going on here? And I would basically, what I would do is just use the Six of Swords in my mind, you know, looking at this Six of Swords, forget the image and just go what the Six of Swords means, because the image doesn't inspire me neither. So that kind of deck is really hard for me to work with. When the decks like the Alcohol Tarot or this kind of tarot, when the theme decks, if I'm not into that theme, then it may work for you, but obviously it's not going to work for me. Now let's go to this deck, the Metamorph deck. Let's go to this kind of strange, unusual little deck. But the tarot card deck I do kind of get, even though I'm not really into this type of imagery. You can definitely see the journey, so it will work for me if I had to work with this deck. Now let's go on to another card. So let's go to the Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords from the Rider-Waite deck, very, very, you know, 10 swords stabbed in our back. If we go to the Ten of Swords from the Everyday Witch Tarot, you know, we've still got the 10 swords stabbed in our back. So even though it will open up my intuition and I'll be able to use this deck a bit more, and the artist inspiration has added a few more layers, I'm still with my own basic meanings. But if I go to my loved 78 Door Tarot, now the stabbing of the back has become acupuncture, which will just make my meaning turn a little bit more to maybe back problems, or, you know, going for your alternative therapies, looking after yourself a bit more. It does take away that harshness of the Ten of Swords. So, you know, it's still in with my basic meaning, but it has taken away a few layers instead of adding some. So that kind of, you know, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's really worked for me in a reading, but other times I've had to really pull on my intuition there. Whereas with my beloved Lightseer's Tarot, which I absolutely love, this is one of those cards that just hasn't hit it off with me. I've had a lot of conversations with other tarot readers about the 78, about the Lightseer's Tarot, Ten of Swords. Some of them love them, and others like me, they're just lacking that drama, you know, and I'm kind of, you know, a bit of a drama queen, as my daughter calls me. And I do like that kind of drama in the Ten of Swords. So here I've taken away a lot of my own meaning, and now it just feels like it's a very watered down version for me, where it's kind of the only card in the deck, by the way, that does that, because it's an amazing deck. But other type readers love it because they don't like them horrible 10 swords stabbed in somebody's back. So that's really, really personal. But if we go to the Atlantis Tarot and get the 10 swords, you know, we've got this kind of war going on, and it's so busy, this card. There's a lot of death, there's a lot of destruction, we're really in a war zone. So maybe for some people that would work amazingly. Let's take, for example, the Page of Swords. Now the Page of Swords in the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot is quite well known. this beautiful little page of swords. He talks about all mental things, mind things, and if we go into the Light Seers Tarot, it's perfect because it's a young person and we've got the studies and them light bulb moments. So we've got the thoughts, the ideas, the studying, the adolescence, the feathers of the birds, you know, you're kind of going away in the clouds, your head sometimes in the clouds. So we've got all these amazing things that to me is one of the basic meanings of this card. If we go to the Everyday Witch Tarot, we're back into the same kind of feeling. We've got the young person with the sword and his books are on the floor. So we're still talking about studying, learning, ideas. It's all very mental. And we have a feather down here on the floor, which represents that air sign again. When we go to the 78 the 78 Door Tarot, we've now got the spy, which is also one of my meanings of the Page of Swords. You know, he's somebody who could be watching. He's kind of like a bit of a stalker. He's a bit of a watcher. He's on the outside watching us. So that's quite a common meaning with this card as well. So even though it's a completely different way of seeing it as here, it still enters my kind of knowledge of the card. So it just really fit kind of well with the card, depending on the day. Whereas with the Atlantis Tarot, he looks more like a king. In fact, or a knight even. He doesn't look like a page at all. And it really doesn't tell me very much, this card. So that's why I like to pick different decks of cards. Now let's for the moment just go to a nice card like the Temperance card. My little angel. I absolutely love this card. Now if we go to the Pagan deck of cards, we've got this really kind of different outlook on the Temperance. Totally different way of looking at her. A nice card, but a different way of looking at her. If we go to the Atlantis, now I just can't get my head around that. When I see the Temperance card and then I see that, to me it just completely knocks me off track. It's like, what wait a minute, what's going on? Why this maze? Well, how is this making any sense? So because I don't understand the story behind the card, because I've not read the book or understood the story, and I've got no time to do that or no inkling to do that, then I'm kind of stuck with a card that makes no sense in my mind whatsoever. It's really hard for me to kind of open any doors with that kind of card. The Temperance just makes no sense there. Whereas the Modern Witch Tarot, now in this Temperance card, even though she looks a little bit like the Star card, I can totally get it. I do feel that even though other cards in this deck just don't kind of hit it for me, this one does. A really nice witchy kind of Temperance card. Like I said, she does feel a little bit like the Star, but I can get away with it being the Temperance. So that is why I have more than 100 decks of cards, because every deck of cards gives me a different deck. It gives me something different. It's just a little bit of excitement. It's a little bit like having the same meal every day. That could get absolutely mind-numbing. Just adding a little bit of spice, changing up the diet, changing up something different. That's what I'm doing with all these different decks. Now, what I tend to do now, because I do so many readings and I've got the cards in my hand so long, is just before a reading, whatever the person's name is, I'll think to myself, what deck should I get for that person today? I've got a reading at 2. What deck should I grab? Now, the majority of the time, I'm going to grab the Rider-Waite, but a lot of the times my intuition will just say, you know, use the Ancestral Path today, or use the 78 Doors today, or use the Light Seers today, which I'm absolutely in love with. Use the Everyday Witch Tarot, or I may even decide to use the Atlantis Tarot, or the Pagan Tarot, or this kind of unusual little deck. I may be inspired to grab it that day. So I do like to try and use my decks. They're not just shoved on a collector's shelf. I do like to grab different decks and use them depending on the reading. The deck I like to teach with is the Rider-Waite Tarot, although I am doing a few courses at the moment using the Light Seers Tarot, and it's going brilliantly. So the Light Seers Tarot is kind of an easy deck to learn with as well. And especially for a lot of people that find these images just boring, basically they find them boring. I don't. I find them absolutely amazing. I love the Rider-Waite. Again, it's down to taste. But I do know once you've learnt the Rider-Waite tarot, you can basically pick up any tarot deck you want. Whether you're inspired by it or not is a different question, but you will be able to read it. Once you've learnt with the Rider-Waite system, you can basically pick up any deck you want to pick up. Now, there's a few decks that speak to me more, like I've already said. The Lightseers Tarot, the Ancestral Path Tarot is another one. I absolutely love Julia Watts's work. Oh my God, the Ancestral Path Tarot, I must have used over 5,000 times. I absolutely love that deck. But there's so many decks out there at the moment, and it is nice to be able to grab a deck and to say, I'm going to use something different. You can just be a tarot reader with one deck of cards and just use the one deck of cards forever and ever. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's amazing to do that. And if you don't get bored or you don't need any more inspiration, go for it. Don't forget, I've been reading the tarot for over, well, God, well, too many decades to even talk about. So I've been reading the tarot for decades. So it's obvious I'm going to get to the point when I want to experiment with other decks. But if you just want to use one deck forever, that's great. Either way, let me know in the comments what decks you like to use, what you think of the other decks that I've pulled out today, and what decks you connect the most with. And if you only use one deck of cards, let me know in the comments as well. I hope you enjoy this video. Don't forget to share me around, to hit like and subscribe to my channel if you do. If you want any coaching or you want to learn tarot, I've got coaching and tarot courses in my skill, and I'll leave the link down below underneath this description. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.